I'm just going to introduce you. So I'm here with Chris Kilham. He's an herbal expert and enthusiast, world traveler, somewhat of an Indiana Jones of the herbal world, exploring the world and gathering information for us about the herbs. Um, and so I'm very excited to have you here today. And yeah, I'm so interested in what, this relationship between people and the herbal kingdom and the sort of wealth of the botanical world out there. Um, how can the natural world, let's just start with like an overview question. How do you feel the natural world can help heal the body and the mind?
Well, I mean, for one thing, we wouldn't be alive and could not be alive without plants. So fundamentally, we need them to exist. We breathe the oxygen that they generate. We eat them, so we swallow their nutrients and take those into our bodies. And we've co-evolved with these plants for millions and millions of years. So we share biology in all kinds of clever ways, whether it's circulation, digestion, heat manufacture. It goes on and on and on. The chemistry is much the same. We, we wear their fibers. We use them as fuels. We build homes out of them. We use them as medicines. We adorn ourselves with them. We create environments with them. I mean, we have a more intimate relationship with plants than with anything but water and air. And, so plants are critical to us, and how they can help us with our health is, on the one hand, nourishing us the way they do when we eat, grains, beans, nuts, seeds, fruits, vegetables, etc. And the other thing is that if we also use them as preventive medicines, during cold season, drinking lots of ginger tea, eating lots of garlic and hot chilies, all of that, or from a curative standpoint, I'm completely congested. I need some eucalyptus. Oh, my intestines are blocked up. I could use some senna, whatever the case may be. I mean, those are just basically kind of symptomatic relief. But let's say you live with chronic inflammation. You can, on a regular basis, eat turmeric and take curcumin supplements and aid yourself greatly and actually boost your health in ways, in addition to helping to deal with the inflammation. So, and then on top of that, of course, the psychoactive plants give us access to states of mind and other realms of spirit that we don't typically access without them. So the palette's pretty broad.
Yeah, that's amazing. What are some of the most surprising discoveries that you've seen with, the healing qualities of plants? Do you
Well,
give us a couple examples of sort of the most maybe surprising or just eye-opening, moments you've had with?
I can tell you my life-saving experience was back in the first week of 1984. I was in Kathmandu, Nepal, and I had a horrendous case of dysentery. I had lost about 35 pounds. I was gravely sick. I was dehydrated and dizzy and could barely stand, and I needed a doctor. And I asked, where the nearest doctor was, and they said, "Well, we got this Ayurvedic guy." And I said, "No, no, 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 no." Even though I'd been using herbs for like 14 years or so, it was like, "No, I need real medicine," was my reaction. I need antibiotics. I need a Western doctor. I need somebody who knows what the hell they're doing. And they said, "Well, look, this is the only person we have. So, there you go." So I went to see this guy, and I was not made confident by him, particularly because all he did was have me lie on a table, and he put his hand on my abdomen, and he goes, "Oh, I know exactly what's wrong with you." And I thought, I'm going to call the Amsterdam embassy and get medevaced out of here right after this. This is ridiculous. And then he gave me some powder and some little pellets that looked like rabbit droppings. And he said, "Look, take a teaspoon of this powder, in water, 3 times a day before each meal, and take 3 of these tablets with that, and you'll be fine in short order. And I thought, yeah, right. So then he charged me like, I don't know, $110 or something for the whole consultation and the medicine. And I left, and I thought, before I contact the embassy, since I'm so weak, I'll go get some lunch. So I went and I did the thing with the water and the powder and the 3 rabbit droppings, and by mid-afternoon, the diarrhea, the fever, and the chills had stopped.
Wow.
And I was like, oh. And it turned out not only did it turn out to be life-saving, but I bothered to really closely read the card of the man I'd gone to see, and he was the head of the entire Nepal Ayurvedic Association. So basically,
Wow.
yeah, it was like going to, the chief surgeon at Columbia Presbyterian or something. I was in very good hands. So that was a revelation for me, because what it said was, oh, this isn't just good for gas. This isn't just good for a sore throat. This isn't just good for, rubbing on abrasions or something. These things can save your life. And I think that experience profoundly changed the course of my path, because then I was fully able to understand these are and can be life-saving medicines.
Wow, I love that story. That reminded me of an experience I had where I actually cut my foot really, really badly, and I was out in the woods, and we were with a Native American herbalist, this guy by the name of Seven Song, and he.
I love Seven Song.
Do you know
Oh
him?
yeah, oh my God,
Yeah,
of course,
okay.
of course. We all know Seven
Well,
Song. He's a legend.
he actually sewed my foot together with propolis. It
Okay.
was really cool. He gave me like this propolis stitch, and it healed right up. And I
Right.
was, he used me as an example to all the students. He said, "Well, here's what the nature can do."
Oh, he's
Um,
fabulous. He's
yeah,
fabulous. What a
yeah,
great
he's
guy.
really fun. So that leads me to my next question, which is, do you have any information as far as like pharmaceuticals that are derived directly from plants or from herbs? I mean, I'm really interested in kind of understanding, why we're so rooted in pharmaceuticals, and where some of those may have actually just been originally derived from.
Well, you see, it all has to do with patent law. This is the fact of the matter. I mean, uh, probably the most effective blood pressure medication ever was reserpine from Rauwolfia serpentina, discovered in the 30s. Probably one of the most effective cardiovascular medicines ever was Recivit, made a powerful multiple antioxidant combination derived from Spanish peanut skins, cinchona from quinine from cinchona tree for malaria. I mean, the list, in fact, is staggeringly long. Okay, the alkaloids from oh shoot, why am I blanking on it? I'll think of it in a minute. But basic digitalis and digitoxin. Okay, those derive from a flower. I mean, we in fact have loads and
That's
loads and loads.
foxglove, right?
Foxglove,
Digitalis.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, thank you. So basically, what happens is these things run out of patent, then they become incredibly cheap. Then the drug companies go, well, that's no good for us. We don't want to live in a generic drug universe, pushing tablets for 3 cents a piece. So we'll go create something else. So it's not that the drugs that have followed are any better than the plant-derived drugs. It's that they can be patented, and that's really all. They may, in many cases, they're far more toxic and far less effective. Um, and on the other hand, there are things like, I mean, peppermint, for example, is a registered medicine in the United States. Not just the menthol from it.
Right.
there are some curious things. The senna leaf, I mentioned it before, but as a laxative,
Yeah.
it's just a common leaf, and yet it's a registered drug, for occasional
Yes.
constipation. And eucalyptus, of course, in cough drops, that is also a registered drug.
Right.
So we still do have then we also have some odd things like I mean, in the psychoactive world, I just have to take a little stab at the pharma companies. Bayer invented heroin, okay,
Wow.
as a treatment for morphine addiction. It works. You
Hmm.
don't know any morphine addicts. Park Davis really got the United States hooked on cocaine
Right.
more than
Wow.
anybody else. Merck invented ecstasy in the 30s, and LSD came out of Sandoz Pharmaceuticals in Switzerland. So when you look at, all of these things had their natural origins. When you look at where these came from, though, even though those of us, kind of on the margins get blamed for these things, they all came from mainstream drug companies. Kava used to be a medicine in the United States until the 50s, when it basically just kind of went out of fashion. Um, for disuse, it wound up losing its status.
Hmm.
Ibogaine from Iboga, for the powerful psychedelic and also addiction treatment, that was a drug in the United States and France up until like 1963. I mean, this list goes on and on and on, Anthony. It does not stop.
Wow. I mean, that's kind of mind blowing. I'm like, oh, what do you think are, I mean, what are the benefits that you mentioned that some of these pharmaceuticals are toxic? What are the benefits of the natural version versus, I mean,
Well, I
what
mean,
what kind of properties are you getting from a natural, version versus the laboratory version?
our bodies can better deal with things from nature because we share biology. We don't share any biology with synthetic chemicals. So either we have to break them down somehow or excrete them or store them. Um, and I don't want to suggest that plants can be toxic. I mean, you make somebody a really good, strong cup of foxglove tea, that'll be the last cup of tea they ever drink. They'll be dead in short order. So it's not as though these things are completely free of hazard. The difference between a medicine and a poison is very often the dose.
Right.
But it is the case that I mean, for example, if you look at the difference between purified cocaine, which represents 1% of the total volume of a coca leaf,
Right.
or coca itself, which you can chew all week long until
Yeah.
your facial muscles fall off. You're not going to get high from this stuff. But it's very, very good for you because it
Mhm.
has other compounds that are profoundly beneficial for the cardiovascular system. Why people in the Andes chew coca leaves so much is that it actually helps to protect the integrity of the physical interior walls of their fine blood vessels, which otherwise would more likely hemorrhage living at high altitude. So it's
Wow.
very clever strategy, the chewing of coca leaf. That's why they do it. You get into a hotel, say above 10,000 feet in the Andes. I mean, I've been there like 30 times or so. There's free coca leaf tea, as much as you can drink, as long as you want to drink it, because it helps you to acclimate. But it's not a line of Coke on the table and a rolled up $100 bill, help yourself, snort a few on us. That's not what's going on. These are very different things.
And so the cocaine on the table, that's a sort of a formula or a refined version of it that is just a specific part of that plant. Help me understand how that's
Cocaine is one molecule derived from a plant that may contain 700 different compounds.
exactly.
So, you know, this is I would, I don't want to get too woo-woo here, but nature puts things together in very wonderful ways. Nature creates in plants compounds that protect the plants. Those same
Right.
compounds often protect us.
Right.
Like antioxidants in plants help the plants to retard the uh, spoilage of cells in the plants due to exposure to like heat, air, light, moisture, and time. And when we take those same compounds into our bodies, they help to retard the rusting process of our cells that we know as oxidation. So there's this natural synergy between us and plants. And you look at something you asked about profound healings, you consider something like ayahuasca,
Yeah.
which is the only combinatory psychedelic on earth. It requires two plants to make, or it won't work. Um, there are detoxifying compounds in there, purgative compounds in there, monoamine oxidase inhibiting compounds in there, psychedelic compounds in there, stimulating compounds, all kinds of things in this rich, admittedly nasty tasting brew. And so when you drink it, it is a far different thing than blowing a little pipe full of DMT, purified DMT. This is a whole plant medicine. And more than that, if you want to go a step further, it's plant spirit medicine. When
Yeah.
you're dealing with plants, when you're dealing with whole plant extracts, you're also dealing, should you choose to be conscious and aware of it, with the spirits of the plants themselves. Big difference.
Yeah. I mean, that is really a huge difference, and something that I'm very passionate about. I really feel like the plants actually have information for us, or some sort of wisdom, and that, even with our product, when people, smoke a little bit for the first time, experience uber ursi for the first time, or these
Hmm.
plants that have been used in ceremony before, they have an experience that is beyond just a chemical or biochemical one, but something like a communion with that spirit of that plant.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Uh-huh. Sure.
and that's, kind of, this is leading me into my next thing, which is about the ceremony, and I'd love for you to share with us some of the ceremonies you've experienced, the plant ceremonies. You mentioned ayahuasca. I know you've had a quite experience with that. What are some other plants you've experienced in ceremony? And what is the value of the ceremonial aspect of the plant usage to you?
Okay. Okay. Well, one plant that I've had great good fortune to experience in ceremony, especially in India and in the Himalayas, is cannabis.
Yeah.
Um, I would say one of the most remarkable psychedelic times I ever had was in Nepal. I went to a particular temple 9 nights in a row, and they had um, a little group of guys who'd obviously been singing together their whole lives, like probably since they were little boys. Um, I think four of them, and they would play holy music for hours every night at this temple, and they would smoke ahead of time. And from the very first time I walked in there, they went, "You, come on, come with us." So I don't know what it was, but I smoked with them, before they played, and then they'd usually take a break in the middle and we'd smoke up again. And that, being in this ancient temple in the Himalayas at night in the cold with these guys playing amazing holy music and high on cannabis, just took me out into remarkably vast states. And what I would say, before I get to peyote, for example, is that ceremony not only ceremonial activity is like a set aside time. Okay, you're not doing anything else. You're not checking your emails. You're not, going to Whole Foods to pick up coffee, whatever it
Right,
is.
right.
This is a set aside time, and you approach it with a reverential attitude and an open mind and a willingness to pursue whatever is your truth. And in the and in that way, you naturally make yourself more open to the expansiveness that is possible with the real psychedelics. And I certainly consider cannabis a psychedelic, especially when taken orally. Um, but so I think that ceremonies are important that way. Also, people tend to be much more intentional in a
Right.
ceremony. I really want to uh, help, resolve the stress from whatever thing occurred in my life, for example, whatever that trauma might be. And further, if you have good ceremonial facilitators or leaders, like some of the types of shamans in the Amazon, then they're really good at helping you to go further out than you may be able to on your own,
Right.
and sort of help you to navigate the space with their remarkable, if very strange, songs.
Yeah.
So I think there's a massive amount of traditional technology and
Hmm.
also human support for each other. You go into a Native American church ceremony and everybody there is genuinely and legitimately praying for everybody else. So
Yeah.
you're in this sort of ocean of consciousness of the peyote, and people are earnestly seeking resolution for their own personal pains, but also there's this tremendous sense of goodwill toward others in the space. That has to be profoundly powerful for everybody there.
Yes. It's a religious sort of experience connecting to something greater than ourselves, like a oneness or a
Hmm.
um and maybe these experiences with the plants allow us that space. Um, One thing I find really interesting is sort of how a lot of these things have moved into, what's considered a recreational use, right, of these herbs. Um, is there a way? Can you see a way of bringing that ceremony to that recreational use, like a way of introducing that, um, even if somebody's going out and smoking a joint with some friends at a show, can they have a little sort of mini ceremony or some way of connecting in that moment?
Well, I think that part of that, in that kind of situation, if you're sort of stepping out the backstage door, it's in that instance, it's probably more a matter of a quick moment of remembrance, like Om Shiva, whatever, something brief, because that's what the moment requires. It
Right,
doesn't
right, right.
require getting out the dorjies and cymbals and bells and, doing some sort of like long yantra meditation on the back steps of the theater. So, so, and also I do want to say that while I'm a big fan of ceremonial uh, experience of the psychedelics, um, I also recognize that there is tremendous, powerful healing worth and value in what we call the so-called recreational use too. You get together with some friends in the woods and you do mushrooms and you run around and you hang out and talk and you take off your clothes and you jump into the river and you sit in the sun and you do all that stuff. That is in and of itself intrinsically healing and beautiful and bonding and lovely in all kinds of ways. So I don't I think in a way the conversation in our culture is kind of positioning recreational as lesser, as somehow pejorative. And I
Yeah,
really think that's a mistake.
right.
Uh, I admit I've smoked probably more cannabis in non-ceremonial circumstances in my life.
Sure.
Um, riding around with my friends, whatever, hiking in the desert, oh
Yeah.
yeah, time to have a smoke. We got to the top
Sure.
of the hill. Time to sit and look at the vista and do that. Um, these, I guess the thing is to not be mechanical about it,
Right,
to
right.
not be so automatic about it that you actually miss the moment, but to, take whatever little bit of inner time you need to appreciate the experience you're having. And that makes the experience richer.
I love that point of view. Um, that's really great. And I think there was a time in human history where it was more natural. There was a kind of a connection to plants that was there all the time. So, you know, it was like you're going to
Sure.
have tea, or maybe if you're not feeling well, you might have, you know, some alcohol with like opium, those poppy pods like soaking
Right.
in there, and just drink that to feel better. And it was just sort of a thing that people did. It wasn't like a separation, you know. But now in this day and age, we have a little bit of a separation, and we find even, you know, I try to introduce some herbs to people, and you're like, oh, people are almost scared of
Well,
herbs.
you know, one of the great ethnobotanists in history was a guy named Richard Spruce. He was in the 1800s, okay? And
Okay.
he described an ayahuasca ceremony that was just flat out hilarious. This was in Colombia. They were dancing, there was a fire, they were drinking ayahuasca, they were blowing psychoactive snuff up each other's noses, they were
Right.
smoking like bat-sized cigars of Amazonian mapacho, the jungle tobacco, and they were drinking Masado, which is a semi-alcoholic starch beverage that you make in part by spitting into it. So there was this whole bunch, you know, it was apparently, you know, a very, very lively event. It wasn't people sitting quietly on their mats in the dark, you know,
Right.
and it sounded chaotic and funny, and you know, like they were just sort of piling on the psychoactives for the day. So I don't think that throughout history it has always been the case that, oh, no, 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 we only do
We're
this when we need
having
to
this.
heal
Right.
somebody. It's like, yeah,
Right.
we really got loaded on Saturday night, man. You know, we drank a ton of ayahuasca and then we sat around drinking Masado until 3. I mean, I think there was a lot of that too.
Right. So maybe it crossed over, and that, I mean, that is interesting now that there's that distinction, that maybe the lines weren't as distinct before, you know, they used to be more blurred, right? could could experience both.
I think sometimes we want to rewrite history and
Right.
imagine people to be more fundamentally reverential or somehow
Right.
put together in that way
They
than
were
we
more
are. And
spiritual back then.
yeah, I'm not convinced.
Right. Right. I see that. I was actually at I was on the reservation, and on Christmas Eve one year, I was actually working in Big Mountain in Arizona, and I was helping the natives herd their sheep. And I remember we were all sitting around the fire. The whole family gathered for Christmas, and I was just blessed to be there over Christmas. I got to meet everybody in the family, hear all the stories, even though Christmas isn't a part of their tradition.
Right,
It
right.
is now, because they all get off
Because
work.
it's
And
Christmas, right? Right.
and I remember we're sitting around the fire, and then one of the guys just pulls out some peyote and just starts chewing on it, and just hands me some peyote, like, here you go. Like,
Yeah,
so, you know, we had that experience that was very
sure.
nonchalant, you know, and it was a
Right.
wonderful night. Ended up being a magical, wonderful night. Um,
Lovely, lovely.
yeah, and that was my first experience with peyote. So there was no introduction there. I didn't even realize what it was, I think, until later. I was just chewing on this thing, and they were all laughing when I was hacking a little bit later. You know?
Well, I think, you know, I mean, there was a documentary or an article, I forget which, an account of the I believe it was the Huichol natives, their walk to Wairikuta, their pilgrimage that they do every year. And
And
there was
they
one
would
account.
hunt it, right, and shoot the arrows at the cactus and the.
Well, they hunted, but they also eat it as they go along. And there was an account of a couple of elders who were like really supposed to be kind of holding the space, being just so massively tripped out that they basically kind of kept quiet for hours, and then they were sort of going back and forth with each other, like, "Well, man, I couldn't really do much there for a while, you know." They go, "No, me too. It's like way too many buttons, you know." So,
Right,
so
right.
again, you know, we well, I do think that a lot of ceremonial and ritual use of these different mind-enhancing agents has persisted throughout all history. You know, people are constantly experimenting. I
Hmm.
mean, what we think of as tradition is truly, you know, even in the most effective circumstances, shit people made up.
Right.
And then they go, okay, so like I found out it seems to work better doing this stuff in the dark. And you know, if you do less than this amount, then you're good. If you do more than that, then you know it blows your head off. I mean, they kind of like figure it out, and then that becomes tradition. And we come along from a different time and it differently.
Yeah, I mean, wow, I love the diversity, you know. There's so much diversity of the plants. I mean, do you think there's any end to the discovery? I mean, are you still discovering new things all the time? Are there still, like when you said, well, this is just shit people figured out, are there still more like more things for us to figure out, or what? I mean,
Well, I do think so. I mean, I think, you know, there are purportedly 50,000 or so medicinal plants in use in the world.
wow.
Totally. I mean, you look at Ayurveda, there are like 7,500 plants used in that entire system. Same with traditional Chinese medicine.
Chinese medicine, yeah.
So, so I think a lot of the discovery to come is sort of the ethnobotanical approach. I mean, as a medicine hunter, that's what I do. I go into places and find out how people use stuff. And I do think, you know, like for example, I many years ago was with a group investigating a plant that is widely used in China to help stroke people recover better, faster.
Wow.
And we don't use it in this country, but in the hospitals of China, this is the life-saving medicine, you know. So I think a lot of it is learning what is in use in other cultures that for any number of reasons simply hasn't been popularized outside of those cultures. I think there's an enormous amount of treasure there.
Is it really the industry that's holding that advancement back?
Well, no, I mean, look, this takes time, energy, and money, okay? You
Hmm.
know, it's so no, I think to the contrary, um, you know, people want to discover these things, but it is difficult to do in many instances.
Hmm.
It requires, you know, going to these places, which is what I do, and spending time there and hanging out. And, you know, then they say, yeah, I know you're here about that one particular herb, but let me show you something else. And the something else might be mind-blowingly cool.
Right, right.
Um, you know, Merck and an organization called InBio did a project years ago in Costa Rica. They decided they were going to screen the rainforest. Okay, they were going to test the forest. What a stupid idea! And so, and so they set up a lab, and they blew $50 million, and they didn't find anything. You know, they took certain plots of land and they tested every part of every plant on those plots of land, and they came up bupkis. And after blowing 50 million bucks, they went they went home. But what they didn't do, they didn't go to the shamans,
They
they
didn't
didn't go
ask
to
the
the healers.
people, right?
Yeah, they
Right,
didn't go to the grandmothers. You know, say,
right.
you know, I got pain here, and they go, oh, you know, what you need is this root, and you need a vapor steam. So let's do both of those, you know?
Right, right,
And then you can find out not only medicines, but methods. So
right.
I think there's plenty more to discover. And given the toxicity and the expense and the failure of the drug model overall, I think we really need these plant medicines. And to keep them around, that means that we need environmental preservation. And that means complete and absolute changes in everything to do with, in our case, U.S. policy and
Hmm.
activity.
Yeah, I mean, especially in this country.
Yeah.
I was in Poland actually, and went to see the doctor. Actually, my wife went to see the doctor there, and they prescribed her chamomile. So we went
Mm.
to the pharmacy, and we literally got these little capsules of powdered
Uh-huh.
chamomile, and what that was her medicine.
Uh-huh.
So it's interesting that that is something that you can get from a traditional doctor even in Europe, where,
Sure.
you're probably not going to encounter that very often in this country.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that would be that's would be great information for people, because one of the things when I was studying in southeastern Ohio, I met several different herbalists, and one of one of the things I heard, and I forget who it was from, whether it might have been from Tismal Crow, who was a Native American medicinal herbalist. He actually passed away, but he told me, I think it was him that told me, when he was doing house calls, a lot of times he would find that the herbs that, people really needed were literally popping up in their front yard like weeds, like
Uh-huh.
somehow coming to find them,
Uh-huh.
and I think that there is this way of nature to try to balance where there's imbalance, or to try to create that balance. And so I encourage people to go out and study those herbs, and even look in their yards for things that are very common, like dandelions, or
Mhm.
that can have really good healing qualities. I mean, even clover has shown
Sure.
anti-cancer qualities and all kinds of things. So it's amazing what is out there right under our toes,
Or
all the
or
time.
or or right above our heads. I mean, we have tons and tons of chaga on our property here
Yeah,
in West
that's
Massachusetts, and that's one of the great immune enhancers of all time, you know?
And is that an adaptogenic? Can you tell us a little bit about what adaptogenics are?
Yeah,
And
sure. An adaptogen is uh, a small class of herbs that basically help us to adapt to all forms of stress, mental and physical. And an adaptogen, rhodiola rosea is an adaptogen, and ashwagandha from India is an adaptogen. Ginseng is, um, and maca is somewhat adaptogenic. I think you could make the claim. Schisandra berry is, and basically what these some of the characteristics are that they increase energy and endurance and stamina pretty much across the board, that they reduce stress, usually by reducing stress hormones in the blood, and that they have little or no known toxicity. And you give these herbs to, in tests, you can't find a toxic level of these herbs. You really can't. Not that a person could actually consume. So the adaptogens are, I mean, I take a lot of adaptogens because I travel very, very heavily. I travel millions of miles, and it takes a toll, a bit of a toll. And I find if I'm taking these on a regular basis, especially ashwagandha, rhodiola, ginseng, and schisandra, I can stay stronger and I can get more done. I also think that people, we're in a time now when the popularization of and the legalization of cannabis is really, really broadening throughout culture. And it's inevitable that cannabis will be paired with other herbs. It makes sense to have a cannabis sleep formula with passion flower and some other, chamomile and some other things that are lemon balm that are sedative and relaxing.
mm,
On the other hand, I have blended cannabis with the adaptogens, especially ginseng, but the others as well, for years. I'll very often make a little kind of herbal cocktail, a little bit of water and some extract of different adaptogenic herbs, and do that when I'm also, taking advantage of cannabis. And it's a mental sharpening thing, very, very good for that. So the adaptogens are a special class. If people want to know more about these botanicals, they should go onto my website, medicinehunter.com. And there's a whole large breakout section on medicinal plants. There's a large breakout section on ayahuasca and information on my book, The Ayahuasca Test Pilot's Handbook. But you'll find a lot of material written, and also videos that I've done on television with the adaptogens.
that's great. And you've written how many books now?
15.
Wow, that's really quite uh, a lot of work. Are you planning on writing more?
I'm doing one right now. Yeah. I used to be more of a kind of a fast and furious book writer, sort of banging them out back to back. And I, I don't do that anymore. I kind of take my time. So I have a manuscript due in November, and that's good. And, I'm enjoying the process. And I figure my next book will be out, in, fall 2020.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I just thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us today, Chris. Really appreciate it. There's so many
Thank
more
you, Anthony.
things I would love to ask you, and we'll also include all those links. We're gonna write a post on the website and get your story out to our fans and
Wonderful.
followers, and share with them your books and your website and all that kind of stuff. So try to like share the word on all the work you're doing. But again, thanks so much, man. I really
Thanks for
enjoyed
having
speaking
me.
with you
I
today.
wish you continued success with your show and your other activities and with your smoking blends as well.
Thanks so
Bless you,
much.
man.
All
Okay.
right, bless you,
Bye.
Chris. Okay, take care.